The blizzard in the west, a synopsis, charts and a detailed account from evidence that I've gathered from people and from various articles that I've researched over the last few months. The whole blizzard of 1891, March the 9th, is a very fascinating event, and I've really enjoyed putting this together, and I hope that you enjoy it as well and enjoy any other videos and synopsises about various weather events in South Dartmoor and the Dartmoor uplands. So I'm going to start off with what we would call then, they called in this particular account, a cyclone, which today we call a low pressure. And it's a cyclone, low pressure centre off start point. So I'm reading a quote. The captain of the Norwegian galliot Falcon from Shields with coal for Portugal stated at the time that on the Monday, that's the 9th, his vessel was caught in a kind of small cyclone, and that whilst about 20 miles southwest of Start Point he had a strange experience. The vessel was being driven along at a furious rate with a northeasterly gale, whilst ahead, within sight, a westerly wind was blowing. This bears out the theory of the cyclone to some extent, as on other parts of the coast the gale was found to blow only from a northeast or a southeast in rapid changes. And another quote from a message sent to somebody in Plymouth. The path and eye of the cyclone. Sir, the cyclonic nature of the blizzard that has been annoying us all so much and causing such a frightful amount of damage during the last 2 days may be judged by the following observations taken by several officers in the South Raglan barracks on the evening of the 9th instant. From these observations it would seem as if for a time the South Raglan barracks, Plymouth, were in the exact centre of the storm, being left for varying periods in a complete calm in consequence. Here are the notes we made. At 12 minutes past 8 p.m. the storm was raging so furiously that the solid old Raglan was shaken to its foundations. The fire was roaring up the chimney as if in a blast furnace, and the noise made by a blizzard generally was such that it was difficult to hear one's neighbours speak. But at 8:13 suddenly came a complete lull. The elements ceased to wage war, the fire assumed its normal demeanour, and an officer who went out to see what had happened came and reported that it was so calm he was able to light matches outside. For 13 minutes did this calm last. At 8:26, with a roar like thunder, the wind returned, and once more we were dreading that armies of chimney pots would fall upon us in their fury. Only for 20 minutes, though, did the hurricane scream and yell, and as before make itself generally obnoxious. At 8:46 there was another absolute cessation of wind until 8:53, when it blizzarded worse than before. Shortly afterward everyone started forth to put out fires, when all the amateur meteorologists discovered to their grief that whatever the cyclone might do in the way of lulling occasionally down at Raglan, on the top of Stoke Hill it blizzarded all night with perfect impartiality. So, just to give a summary of the timing of the eye of the cyclone, 8:12, storm raging furiously. 8:13, suddenly a complete lull for 13 minutes. 8:26, a roar like thunder as the winds returned. 8:46, another sudden complete lull. And 8:53, a roaring storm returned even more furiously on a northeast wind. And analysis of this event, it would seem that the eye passed over South Devon and South Dartmoor before retreating back southwards. Then 20 minutes later, once again the cyclone tried to move northwards, but just after 7 minutes it was once again pushed back southward. The storm was even more furious after this, and one could suppose that the physics of halting and moving a storm back southwards would have increased the isobars on its northern edge, hence the very severity of the northeasterly winds. During the late 1980s, I had experienced the eye of a cyclone or a low pressure coming over South Devon, and I well remember that the turbulent winds and gusts around 9 o'clock suddenly went totally silent, and yet within minutes the roaring winds returned. As far as we can tell, the eye, from eyewitness accounts, the eye of the cyclone only crossed the South Devon area before moving back into the channel and continuing its east or east-northeast progress eastwards. The nature of the blizzard, temperatures, pressure and wind observations. When the storm was at its height, the barometer at Devonport was observed to be 29.27, in other words 991 millibars. But in the course of half an hour, pressure was indicated by 29.20, 989 millibars. The rise being of course considerably a sudden one. Within an hour of this register being made, a fall had again occurred to 29.25, 990 millibars, and even little below this was marked, at which point the column remained until the early hours of the morning. It was clear that during the whole progress of the storm the temperature was never very low. The great cold came from the strength of the wind. During the storm and in the course of the several days that followed, but not more than 5 or 6 degrees of frost, or 0 degrees centigrade to -3 centigrade, were registered. And in one day of the week there was snow in every hand. The thermometer never rose higher than freezing. The wind, however, was terrific, its maximum force during the night being 10 and 12. To this extraordinary velocity is due to the fact that the visitation is best described by the term blizzard. With a less violent wind there would have been a great fall of snow, and as great as probable as that of January 1881, when difficulties and disasters were painful, comparable with those of the present year, were spread and broadcast over not only the western portion but the whole of England. But it would have been a snowstorm and not a blizzard, and many of the phenomenal aspects of the visitation under notice would have been absent. In the course of the present narrative, many remarkable effects due to the powdery nature of the snow will have to be recorded. Before concluding the meteorological portion of the subject and getting on with the story, it may be well to observe that according to the best authorities, a blizzard is caused by a fierceness of wind which blows the cold into the vapor in the atmosphere, consolidates it into a fine snow, without allowing any time for formation of a snowflake. We are accustomed to associate ideas of gentleness and beauty and stillness with the fall of snow. The blizzard was apparently, but of course only in name, a new acquaintance. Shows us that the reverse side of the picture and suggests nothing beyond merciless fury and destructiveness. It is also noted that after this blizzard had passed, by that there was a brief lull with a ridge of high pressure before another blizzard came through. The second one was not so violent as the first and only passed over Devon and Cornwall before slipping southeast into France. Nevertheless, this already increased the depths of the Alpine snow. To quote, "Snow fell from Monday afternoon to Wednesday morning, and there would have been 48 hours of continuous snow. A shallow ridge of high pressure gave a more settled conditions for a time, bringing a glint of sunshine for a while, but this was calm before the next storm. An Atlantic low pushed its way from the west, bringing a fresh blast of gales and heavy snow to southwestern England during the night of the 11th and into the 12th. And as we've said before, the low took a more southeasterly track, drifting into Brest, northwestern France, and rather than along the English Channel, along the south coast like before. So my thoughts on this. According to these accounts, not a single snowflake in shape or form could be seen during the full rage of the blizzard. It was just pure snow dust. And that is really quite amazing to think about it, because that snow dust was so powdery, it went for every single crack and crevice. And I remember in 2018 when we had those two blizzards in early March and mid-March. The snow dust on the first one was so incredibly fine, it was coming everywhere and going for every single crevice and crack. To my knowledge, never has such a violent blizzard been experienced in South Devon since that day, over 128 years ago. And I'm sure some of you will put me right, but I've never heard of any blizzard in this country since that time that was truly as bad as that at sea level. You know, we have to remember that these temperatures that were recorded earlier are at sea level. And the wind chill, storm force 10 to hurricane force 12, which meant a mean speed of over 64 miles an hour, which means there would be gusts over 100 miles an hour. With a wind chill of between -15 and -17 on the new scale, and according to calculator.net, frostbite would occur within 30 minutes. And if we was to go onto the old scale, I think the temperature would be, the wind chill would be something like -20 to -27. But we'll stick with the new scale for the sake of this synopsis. So remember again, these temperatures were at Plymouth, which is sea level. So allowing for altitude and wet adiabatic lapse rate and such, the highest hills around the area would have been -6 degrees. And that would be given a wind chill of -19. And that's an incredibly cold experience with 100-mile-an-hour gust. And remember, this is March. This is the delights of spring and warming sun, the UV of 3 to 4, a time where you can actually get a suntan or sunburn. So during the whole time of the blizzard was raging, it varied from northeast to southeast. The changes were very rapid, but this was the widest range. Along the coast, the greatest severity appears to have been experienced from point to point, which would be from Falmouth Bay to Teignmouth. Many towns exposed to the sea having to bear their share of the burden, and happily many valuable lives were lost through disastrous wrecks. If a map of the three counties, Devon and Cornwall and Somerset, were to be consulted, it would be found that taking this portion of the coast as an opening through which the broad shaft of the hurricane entered, now sweeping in a northeast and now a southeast direction, the area of country that has sustained the heaviest damage will be embraced. The intensity of the violence afflicted gradually diminishing the further one travels east and north-west. It quotes, Dartmoor forms a kind of centre of the chief scene of desolation, and Plymouth, being well within that range, has suffered far more severity than any other large town in the three counties. In particular, it has clear effects that the gale are not so serious there, though the falls of snow along the south coast would have been pretty copious. So my analysis of this, according to these reports so far, the area from Falmouth to Teignmouth would be the most southerly towns. If we look on a map of southwest England, southern England, we can plot an arched curve from Falmouth to Teignmouth, which continues to go along the south coast. And the very fiercest part of the cyclone would have been 20 to 30 miles into the English Channel, once you've got past the jut of Devon and Cornwall sticking out into the channel compared to the rest of southern England. And the charts that I've got on these slides will show the curved track of the storm in South Devon as it juts out some 30 miles further south into the channel, and consequently suffered the fiercest of the winds. Interestingly enough, in 1987, when we had that really cold spell, and I think we had a maximum of -5.3 that day, it was Thelstone, right down on the south coast, which juts into the channel, that got the worst snow. In fact, they had a foot of snow from streamers of heavy showers. And it's the same principle with this hurricane that came through, this cyclone. Being as that South Devon was sticking out into the channel more than the rest of the south coast, it just caught the edge of the cyclone in its centre. We have a brief account also here on the Zulu Express, but I'll expand more on that later. The Zulu Express was a well-known train that travelled from Penzance to Plymouth, but its exact whereabouts could not be discovered. There was some anxious looking for the Zulu Express from Paddington due at Plymouth early in the evening, but the train was at Brent, or as we call it now, South Brent, with about 10 feet of snow on the line between it and Plymouth. And it was presently seen that the passengers were meeting some novel and undesirable experiences. The Zulu Express. The Zulu Express left London Paddington bound for Devon and onward to Penzance, but came to a halt as it ran into enormous drifts at Brent. And we have a picture here to look at of the Zulu Express, and being as I live virtually in South Brent, I can give you an accurate synopsis of details of the scenery around. Immense snow drifts caused many trains to be snowbound. The Zulu Express remained at South Brent for 6 days before finally being dug out as the thaw set in. And as I said, being as I live near South Brent, or good as in it, I can convey to you some facts. The view ahead is looking northwest, and the hills are around 700 to 750 feet. And here we can see a huge drift around the hedgerows. From my past experience of a good Devonshire blizzard, would have a snow line of about 30 feet or 10 metres on the leeward side of the hedge. But these drifts, judging by the distance and the scale, would have been 50 to 100 feet from the hedges, which is quite incredible. We can see how the grassy areas show the windy parts. In the mid-background, we have 2 conifer trees, which are buried below with a deep covering of snow. The snow drifts that have migrated down the line, the whole scenery was more like one of the Alps. The other day I stopped and peered over the bridge just to check the actual height there, and it's a good 20 feet or more between the bridge and the railway line. So although they've got 10 feet there, they've mentioned 10 feet, I think it was probably even more than that. It was an incredible experience, and you know, the parts of South Dartmoor here, around the edge of the moors, incredible depths of snow, and that'll be on the next sort of next slide. South Brent and Totnes. We're very blessed really to have an article written by people who witnessed this blizzard in 1891 to be able to convey to you the kind of depths of snow that were experienced here on South Devon, on the uplands of Dartmoor. In the picture above we have the cutting through the snow at South Brent. I'm not sure where it's to, because the roads have changed quite a bit since 1891. But South Brent, this moorland town has grown famous through the snowing up of its gates of the Zulu Express from London on the memorable Monday night. Snow fell there from Monday afternoon to Wednesday morning. A snowplough with 3 engines arrived in Newton Abbot on Thursday morning, but for some time it was not very effective, the snow being so high on either side of the line that as soon as the way was fairly clear, the banks on the rear of the plough toppled over again, and the line was once more blocked by snow. The depth of the snow in the town was so great as to frequently be above the windows and the doors of the houses. The depth of the snow at South Brent, altitude 325 to 470 feet, was somewhere in the region between 4 to 6 feet, and this would be in the streets around, let alone the drifts, and this is incredible for South Devon. We cannot begin to really understand the hardship that must have been, and since there were only shovels and spades and a team of fit people, and that's all they would have had to clear the snow. Unfortunately for them, the thaw began a few days later. Many thousands of livestock perish under deep drifts, yet there are tales of lambs being born under the snow and surviving. The other town I want to mention is Totnes, which is about 7 miles east of South Brent. The snow in the streets was 3 feet deep, and in adjacent country roads the depths from 6 to 8 feet were recorded. Totnes is about 6 miles east or 7 miles east of South Brent, with an altitude of 20 to 200 feet. Even this historical town had snow depths of 3 feet in its town. All the roads and country lanes would have been blocked from hedge to hedge between 6 and 8 feet deep, or deeper, according to the height of the hedge. And it must be said that around the edges of Dartmoor, the depth of the snow would have been well over 40 at times into 60 feet. In fact, there are records that that a vicar skied across Tavy Cleeve, which is 300 feet deep. Well, that remains to be seen, but that's what the custom goes, the sayings go. But basically, any hedge that was facing the northeast, whatever depth that hedge was, would have been filled from top to tail. It was an incredible blizzard, and you know, if you're into snow and into extreme weather, this would have been one to remember without a doubt. We cannot imagine the ferocity of the snow, a blinding dust filling the air and choking snow for hour after hour. Absolutely amazing. And finally, when all this snow had melted away, I guess there would have been snow drifts along the hedges for many weeks afterwards. But I've got an interesting fact here. My grandfather, who was born in 1899 and worked for the Christian Cooperative Association, and used to push a bike around South Hams and go around from farm to farm, and he was told by an elderly gentleman born in the 1870s that there was still snow lying behind Berrystone Rock on Midsummer's Day on its north face. So I had a bit of a look at this and try and work out a bit of the analysis of this whole event. The rock is about 1 mile west of Harberton, that's in South Devon, altitude of 481 feet. And the rock and the fields are found facing northeast, with a steep hill running up from that side to the rock, with only one small hedge to block the track of snow and wind. So the snow would have had blown a good distance before coming to rest at the rock. The rock is between 12 to 15 feet high, and most likely to have had a clump of trees and foliage around it, and thus filtering out, or helping to filter out the sunshine during the intensity of May and June. So the snow lasted at this place, Berrystone Rock, from March the 9th to June the 24th, Midsummer's Day, a total of 107 days. And I don't know if any other time, certainly in southwest England, where snow has lasted until Midsummer's Day. Perhaps on the top of Ben Nevis in northern England, in Scotland, but I'm not aware of any snow that's lasted to Midsummer's Day in the UK. Again, I'm sure some of you who are listening to this will say, well, actually, I know somebody who said it lasted to Midsummer's Day on this place, of which case I'll be glad to hear. So I hope you've enjoyed this account. I've had great fun and enjoyment in putting it together, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the videos and such that I put on of various extreme events in South Dartmoor and the Dartmoor upland.